It's our pleasure that Professor Shivaji Sarkar, he is head of the Department of Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. He is with us, and today I have invited him for a guest lecture on media regulation. Professor Shivaji Sarkar has been working as a senior journalist, and since 27 years he is in the active field of journalism. Before that, he has worked as senior editor in Financial Express and many other newspapers. He has a specialization in business journalism, and afterwards he has designed course curriculum of various universities. And I was fortunate that I have worked with him under his leadership for a few months. He was dean in IIMC Unison University, where I was working before this. So I welcome sir to please come and share his experiences and give a lecture on.
मीडिया रेगुलेशन से आप क्या समझते हैं? What do you think about regulation? And should there be regulation? What is regulation? Do you have some idea what is regulation? Yes, please.
Rules and disciplines.
Pardon?
Rules and disciplines.
Partly yes, but not exactly. Anybody else? Is regulation censorship? What do you think? आम तौर पे लोग कहते हैं कि रेगुलेशन नहीं होना चाहिए क्योंकि ये सेंसरशिप है. Do you agree with that? Okay. That is where the beginning is actually. That is where the difference is. Censorship is looking at your every copy, whatever you are writing, the way you are writing, your expressions, keeping a close watch on that. And not only that, censorship means whatever you are writing, whatsoever way you are writing, that is to be checked by somebody, and if he doesn't like, he can kill the copy. Censorship is authoritarian. So during emergency, when censorship was imposed, there used to be a government officer in every newspaper office. Then those days television wasn't there virtually except for the Doordarshan, which was also at its nascent stage. So that officer would see each and every word to his capability, and at the last moment, when the newspaper page is ready at 12 o'clock in the night, he would say, इसको निकाल दीजिए, ये खबर नहीं जा सकता. क्यों नहीं जा सकता? You can't ask him. He doesn't like it, so it won't go. And there, from the census office, that is basically the information department that was functioning at the censor, from their offices, at different times some instructions would come how to describe someone as what or not, whether to use someone's name or not, whether you can write about somebody or not. All these kinds of instructions used to come. And I will just give one instance. There may be many. No sooner emergency was imposed, after a few weeks, a one-liner instruction came, and it used to be unsigned. There was no signature or anything on it. It was just a one-liner typed message delivered to the newspaper office, all officers at the same time. And it said, Mr. Sanjay Gandhi is to be described as youth leader. You should write Mr. Sanjay Gandhi, youth leader. Fine. Next morning, he became youth leader. After 6-7 months, another similar instruction came, and it said, Sanjay Gandhi is to be mentioned as Mr. Sanjay Gandhi and not as youth leader anymore. Anymore, I am adding, it was not there. So after 7 months, he became the national leader. The transformation of a person through the censorship. In those days, I was in UP, and Chief Minister was, if you have heard his name, he was a very stalwart politician at that time, H.N. Bahuguna, Hemvati Nandan Bahuguna, whose son, as Vijay Bahuguna, was Chief Minister of, you should remember now. Yes. जोर से बोलिए. Uttarakhand. So somehow Bahuguna and Indira Gandhi, they went on different pages. And even when he was chief minister, the censor office changed the tactics. Now instead of sending written messages, the officer would come, would have some tea with you, and jokingly say, do you know, today onwards, you are not to use Mr. Bahuguna's any copy. So the Chief Minister Bahuguna was a non-entity for the purpose of the media from next morning. So when you talk of censorship, this is censorship. There are of course many other incidents, many other things. And if you remember, the Statesman and Indian Express came out with various international news organizations, including BBC and others. They picked up such newspapers and showed on it. So again, next, after a few days, instructions came that no space in a newspaper can be left blank. If something is being removed, it has to be filled up with something else. The censor officer would not tolerate any criticism, even of, say, a government officer's peon, because it was a reflection on the government. And the news was totally sanitized. Sanitized to the extent that when the election started, an election in 1977 was held while emergency remained promulgated. So many newspapers brought out news coverages, and one of them, of course, was National Herald. People used to jocularly said that these newspapers are giving 700 seats out of 500 to the Congress. That is censorship. Many journalists were jailed because they were not towing the government line. Even in Haryana, large number of people were in jail. Your chancellor, you know who is your chancellor? He was also in jail. So censorship is authoritarian. It dictates what to write and what not. It is imposed by a government. In democracy, in martial laws, and whatever way, at every places, the censorship is from the top, from the government. That is the censorship. In newspapers, there is another kind of censorship. That is called self-censorship. In a self-censorship, newspapers themselves imposed certain restrictions on themselves and what to write and what not. That may be as per the policy or as per the demands of the society in various ways. That is basically not censorship, but a newspaper's way about not writing about certain aspects, basically a matter of ethics. But that is also exactly not censorship. It is basically depends on the newspaper's conscience. In reality, that is not censorship. And regulation is completely different. Regulation is what I just said, self-censorship. It is exactly not censorship at all. It is basically a kind of a system that any news organization or newspaper would adhere to certain basic ethics. अब ये काम गलत काम ये ऐसे ऐसे नहीं करना है, खबर के लिए पैसे नहीं लेना है, जो खबर हम सही समझेंगे उसे ही हमें पब्लिश करना है, कहीं किसी के दबाव में किसी भी खबर को नहीं रोकना है। संपादक जो है वो सर्वोच्च अधिकारी है और वो अगर चाहता है तो किसी भी खबर को जैसे वो चाहता है उस तरह से वो प्रकाशित कर सकता है कि समाज के किसी भी वर्ग को किसी भी माने में किसी भी तरह से या किसी भी व्यक्ति को हम कोई ऐसी चीज़ न लिखें जिससे उसको किसी भी प्रकार का नुकसान पहुंचता हो, किसी भी प्रकार से उसकी छवि खराब होती हो। तो रेगुलेशंस के ये कुछ जो है पैरामीटर्स हैं। हिंदुस्तान में रेगुलेटर है कोई अखबारों के लिए या न्यूज़ चैनल्स के लिए? बताइए। हाँ? नो, दे आर नॉट रेगुलेटर्स। वो लोगों को गुमराह करते हैं। वो मैं इस पर बाद में आऊँगा, मैं इस पर भी नहीं आना चाहता। पर कोई रेगुलेटर है, ऑफिशियली अपॉइंटेड रेगुलेटर? अखबारों के लिए कोई है? देखिए, जब पहली बार फर्स्ट प्रेस कमीशन बना तो फर्स्ट प्रेस कमीशन ने कुछ रिकमेंडेशंस दिए, जिसमें कई चीज़ें बनाने की बात की गई, जिसमें से एक था कि अखबारों के लिए एक रेगुलेटर होगा और उसको उन्होंने कहा कि एक प्रेस काउंसिल की व्यवस्था की जाए एज इट वॉज इन द यूके एट दैट टाइम। So press council जो है 1965 it was created. How it was created? Through an act of parliament. पार्लियामेंट के कानून से बनने वाला एक इंडिपेंडेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन था जिसका काम था न्यूज़ सिस्टम में और ख़ास करके अखबारों तक ही उसकी, चूँकि उस वक्त तक अखबार की ही बातें होती थी, तो ये एक मिसमैच रहा कि प्रेस काउंसिल ऑफ इंडिया हैज़ इमर्ज्ड ओनली एज अ रेगुलेटर फॉर न्यूज़पेपर्स और प्रेस काउंसिल ऑफ इंडिया और दूसरा जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन रहा है हमारा जुडिशियरी, सुप्रीम कोर्ट्स एंड इवन हाई कोर्ट्स, they have come as as the defender for the press freedom in this country. But in both the cases, whether it is the judiciary or the Press Council Act, the basic part of regulation is that we should not cow down before any authority. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अपने कई जजमेंट्स में ये कहा है कि कोई भी अथॉरिटी जो है वो हमारा अखबारों का या समाज का गार्जियन नहीं है. द डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट इज नॉट योर गार्जियन. डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट का काम है, हमने उनको काम सौंपा है, समाज ने उनको काम सौंपा है कि समाज के जो सामान्य व्यवस्थाएं हैं वो सही ढंग से सुचारू रूप से चलेगी. वो हमारे आका नहीं है और हमारे किसी काम को रोकने का उनको अधिकार नहीं है. 19(2) imposes certain restrictions. अभी आपने जेएनयू के केस में देखा होगा कि सेडिशन के बारे में सरकार ने कई तरह के केसेस करने का फैसला किया. तो 19A is a restriction on obscenity and sedition or any improper writing. तो 19(2) जो है 19(1)A पर कुछ restrictions भी लगाता है and court also accepts that. But there is an interesting aspect about obscenity. What is obscenity? That also changes as the society evolves, the society changes. Can you give a definition of obscenity? Anybody? What is obscenity? What is obscene? कोई बताइए ना. आप भी आपस में कई बार डिस्कस करते कि ऑब्सीन है. What is that obscenity? Anybody? Can anybody say what is obscenity? कोई अंदाजा नहीं obscenity क्या होता है? Well, that's the real truth. Nobody really knows what is obscenity. Obscenity is something quite vague. What is obscene today may not be obscene tomorrow also. I'm just giving you some instance, very simple instance. Even about 20 years from now, maybe less than that, in the eastern parts of India, Bengal included, if any girl used to put up salwar and kameez, which is the normal dress in this part of the country, it was considered obscene. Do you consider that obscene? So obscenity varies from place to place, from people to people. And it also changes from time to time. Now, even if you go into the Middle East, if a girl doesn't cover her face, it is considered obscene. In this part of the country, despite the fact we are also very conservative, we consider that to be an operation. So somewhere it may be obscenity, somewhere it may be considered operation. Similarly, obscenity in terms of painting or various art forms is also defined like that. And I think the best instance of obscenity defined by the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate in 1971 of Bombay. तो चीफ मेट्रोपॉलिटन मजिस्ट्रेट, जैसे आजकल बार गर्ल्स का चलता है ना कि बार गर्ल्स के डांस होने चाहिए, नहीं होने चाहिए, बात होती है कि नहीं होती है? होती है. So those days it was cabaret, and cabaret was also considered very obscene and all that. और पुलिस के लिए जो है ये जो छोटी छोटी चीज़ें होती हैं, इस पर एक्शन करना कई तरह से उनके लिए बड़ा आसान होता है, क्योंकि उसमें उनके पैसे भी मिल जाते हैं, लोगों को परेशान करने का भी मिल जाता है और अपनी कारगुजारी दिखाने का भी मौका मिल जाता है. तो ऐसे ही किसी केस में उन्होंने किसी कैबरे जॉन्ट्स पे उन्होंने मुकदमा किया, उनको बंद करवाया, एंड दे सेड इट वाज ऑब्सीन. मुकदमा चलने के बाद जब चीफ मेट्रोपॉलिटन मजिस्ट्रेट ने अपना जजमेंट दिया, जजमेंट में उन्होंने कहा, एंड यू शुड रिमेंबर दैट व्हाट ही सेड, एंड इट वाज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग जजमेंट. जिस सीन के बारे में पुलिस ने जिक्र किया था, उसके बारे में उन्होंने कहा, द सीन वॉज ऑब्सीन बट नॉट अनॉइंग. ऑब्सीन तो था पर परेशान करने वाला नहीं था. सो ऑब्सिनिटी इज दैट वेग ऑल्सो. सो 19(1)(a) का जो रेस्ट्रिक्शन है, उसका डेफिनेशन इसीलिए बदलता रहता है. बट एट द सेम टाइम द कोर्ट has virtually allowed absolute freedom as per the Press Council of India Act to the newspapers, to any news system, and that remains valid, and that they did immediately after the promulgation of the Constitution in 1950 itself. So court said in a newspaper, I'm not going into all those details, but that will take time. Finally, newspaper editor is the final authority. Whatever he wants can be published, and nobody can stop him from doing that. That is one aspect. But despite that, there has always been certain complaints about newspapers, about their partisanship, about being biased, as even it is now. Some unethical practices, and that was an issue that rocked everybody. The journalist union, that then it was Indian Federation of Working Journalists, they had taken the plea to the first press commission for setting up the press council. First press commission had recommended that, but after a long struggle again, the act was enacted only in 1965 and press council was set up. When was press council set up? It was 16th November 1965. Till today, the Press Council of India and other journalist organizations celebrate that as the Press Day. During emergency, Mrs. Gandhi repealed the act, and in 1978, when the Janata Party government was there, again it was revived. So the regulator's job is to see if I am not functioning as per the basic standards and tenets decided by the society, then the regulator can pull me up. And Press Council of India Act was repealed because Press Council of India between 65 and 77 had given severe strictures against government officials, against different governments, including the Bihar government. The issue with the Bihar government was that they had appointed a very senior editor who was critical. He was the editor of Searchlight, of the Birla Group was very critical of the government and elevated him to a very senior so-called position in the government. Some people moved against it, and court said any kind of allurement or any kind of this kind of elevation is against the basic tenets of the regulation, and no government must do that. Regulation is done and it is being overseen by the Press Council of India for any newspaper. How a newsman is behaving, even that is part of the regulation. How an editor is acting, that is a part of the regulation. How any officer is trying to interfere with the independence of the editor or the newspaper or the press as such, that is part of the regulation. But regulation does not mean that the government has or the society has any right to stop from publication of any news of any kind. Regulation is basically a system, as you also have in the other various kinds of laws, to regulate your normal social life. Similarly, regulation is required for a news system so that it remains honest, unbiased, and gives news as it is, that is, in the factual manner. They are not playing with the facts. If they are playing with the facts, that means there is a bias. That means they are not objective. What is objectivity? Because that is very important to know, understand. What is objectivity? Normally also this is a very difficult question, but that is what regulation wants to ensure. According to Webster dictionary, to be objective means to express or deal with facts. Remember this very critical word, facts. Newspapers don't deal with truth. News system doesn't deal with truth, because truth is subjective. But facts, we say facts are sacred because you can't change the facts. Truth can be different for different persons, but fact will remain one. So, to be objective, to express or deal with facts or conditions as perceived without distortion by personal feelings, prejudices, or interpretations. फैक्ट को जैसे है वैसे ही रखना, उसमें अपने तरफ से कोई रंग ना चढ़ाना, दैट इज ऑब्जेक्टिविटी किसी भी तरह का. हमारा काम ये नहीं है, महाभारत तो आपने पढ़ा होगा ना, अश्वत्थामा हतः इति गजः, ये कहने के हमें अधिकार नहीं है. अगर हम ये कहना है तो हम ये कहना पड़ेगा, either the elephant Ashwatthama was killed or Ashwatthama the elephant was killed. Okay. सभी हमने जो बताया, इसको अगर हम दूसरी तरीके से कहें, it simply means that facts and information be presented in a straight, truthful way, without any other influences such as own point of views. Your own point of views as a writer of any kind, and particularly as a journalist, doesn't matter at all. Opinion or emotions, it also doesn't matter. Whatever opinion or emotions you may have, you may like it or not. If you have been given a task to write about, say, a news item, you have to write as it is there. So, my personal emotions, I may like but certain thing or not. I may not like if some person, but something has happened to him or something that is involved about him, I do not have any right to cut that news out. I may not like a chief minister, I may not like a police officer, I may not like some of my colleagues. That doesn't mean I have a right when it comes to the matter of news, I can cut that out. If something has happened, maybe a chief minister, maybe a prime minister, maybe a minister, maybe an official, anything, my duty is to tell the society that it has happened without what I feel. That is objectivity.
So, but then don't you think being a journalist is a non-creative job?
Absolutely not.
Because putting the news into a pyramid style is
That is what the fact is, because I will tell you why. My job is more important than myself. If a journalist ever feels, and that is what most TV channel anchors feel, they are more important than the news, and that is why they try to put, and you yourself criticize, the words into the mouths of the speakers that are there. Our job is to, you see, if you go through the Press Council of India Act, if you go through the various judgments of the Supreme Court, you will find it has not given any unfettered right to the journalist or any writer as such. The basic purpose, you are here virtually as a representative of the people, because normally a normal man can't be everywhere at different happenings, be it an accident, be it a meeting, be it anything else. And people expect, as it will happen in your case, अगर आप घर से कहीं जाते हैं और मोहल्ले में कुछ होता है और घर में आके अगर लोग पूछते हैं, तो घर के लोग आपसे ये उम्मीद करेंगे जो हुआ है और जैसा आपने देखा है बिल्कुल वैसे ही घर के लोगों को बताएं, या नहीं कुछ और चाहते हैं वो? Do they want something else? मोहल्ले में कुछ हुआ हो, शहर में कुछ हुआ हो, और अगर आप वहाँ रहे हैं तो घर के लोगों को आपको क्या बताएंगे? आप कुछ छुपाने की कोशिश करेंगे या कुछ रंग लगाकर बताने की कोशिश करेंगे? क्या करेंगे आप?
सर मोस्टली यही होता है, कुछ कोई भी आप इंसिडेंट देखते हो, आप एज इट इज उसको डिपिक्ट नहीं कर सकते,
नो
ऑलरेडी आ जाता है।
नो, जैसे हम देखा है वैसे ही हमें बयान करना है. एंड व्हाई? दैट इज द that is why you are here, because you do not understand the basics. Creativity doesn't mean you can create pseudo facts. You can't create pseudo facts. जो facts है वही हमें बताना है. And why? Because journalist's job is just not to narrate an incident as it has happened. There is a purpose also. I told you, he is representing the people. A journalist, in reality, is a non-entity. He is only a narrator of events. Beyond that, he has no role. And can narration be any way clouded?
So, but manipulation can happen.
That is why the regulator is. When you manipulate, the regulator chips in. regulator would not tolerate a manipulation. Okay? That is what I am saying. That is what this definition says. To be objective, your emotions, your personal feelings doesn't matter. That is where you manipulate. When you inject your personal feelings, when you inject your emotions, when you inject your political color or any other kind of color, social, caste, any other kind of color. I mean, in this Jat, during the Jat riots, major problem was that nobody was trying to tell the truth. Everybody was trying to depict an incident as per his caste combination. That is manipulation. And that is where the regulator is needed. Now, for one caste, that may be very good news, but for what about the other one?
मोस्टली हम लोग देखते हैं कि जब भी कोई न्यूज़ आती है, अगर किसी भी स्टूडेंट के बारे में है, तो ले दे के बात यहाँ तक ले आ जाता है कि दलित छात्र को पीटा है, फिर कुछ किया. अगर कोई जनरल का स्टूडेंट पे कोई अटैक होता है, वहाँ पर इतना कोई जैसे कहते हैं हल्ला नहीं होता है, बट लेकिन अगर कोई दलित स्टूडेंट है,
उसको समझ गया आप जो कहना चाह रहे हैं.
जी सर. मैनिपुलेशन में सर ये फिर इतना क्यों करते हैं?
Absolutely right. That is what you have said is basically is trying to sell a news. न्यूज़ को हम अब एक प्रोडक्ट की तरह देखते हैं, उसको बेचने की जब कोशिश करते हैं, then we manipulate it. If it is Rohit Sinha, it is not news. If it is Rohit Demula, we highlight it. That is where exactly the role of the regulator is. And here, the society is not going to the regulator to protest about it. If you go through various press council of India's observations, criticisms, censoring of editors, you will find they have covered many of these questions which you are raising now. The regulator's role is extremely important, and particularly what you were saying exactly, I was coming to that. This is happening more with the rise of the television. Why? Television doesn't have a regulator. अगर आपके किसी टेलीविजन चैनल के खिलाफ शिकायत करनी है तो आप किसके पास जाएंगे? Unfortunately, that is the truth. You will have to go to Information and Broadcast Ministry. But that is what I would not like to. Yes, ministry is not the regulator. Ministry is basically a policeman. Ministry's function is the same, which is virtually prohibited by the Supreme Court's various judgments. The ministry official, as per the Supreme Court judgments, cannot do the regulation because they consider themselves as the guardian of the system. A regulator is not a guardian. That is where the difference is. And the regulator listens to all the sides and then tries to assess whether there has been deviation from the original or not. If there is a deviation from the original, as the incident has happened or as the incident has been, then the regulator takes the action that is prescribed with him, censors, it can fine. You see, in India, unfortunately, television doesn't have a regulator. NB and IB, you say, is the regulator, they say, I will self-regulate, it never happens. There is no societal control over it on NB or IB. And this must be dismantled, this is a mockery. whenever they tried to take an action against any of their members and impose a fine of 1 lakh rupees, he said, I care a hoot for them, let them do whatever they want. And he simply walks out of the NBO or IBA. That is not regulation. The anchors virtually go on speaking something that is neither factual and nor in simple terms truth, but they go scot free. What has the NBO or IBA done to them? Has any anchor been pulled up by IBA or NBA? But go through the records of the Press Council of India and find out how many editors have been censored, how many reporters have been censored, how many newspapers have been censored, and how many officials have been rebuked by them. Now, presently, what you need is an effective regulator for the entire media. Easiest way is to increase the ambit of the Press Council of India with some amendments, because creating a new body is always difficult. Expanding the existing one is the easiest always. So, what I would suggest, and I have been suggesting to the government a number of times, ministry cannot function as the policeman. Ministry is the policeman. At their whims, they close down telecast of any news channels. That is also not acceptable. So, we can't accept a policeman and non-regulation who can effectively show the path to the news system. That is what the job of the regulator is. हम गलती करते हैं, हम गलती करने के लिए कि हम अपने एम्प्लॉय को कहेंगे कि बताओ हम गलती कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे हैं? Will you do that? करेगा वो? हम अगर अपने एम्प्लॉय को कहते हैं कि भाई हम गलती करेंगे तो तुम मुझे बताना कि हमने गलती किया कि नहीं किया, क्या कोई एम्प्लॉय बताएगा टू हिज मास्टर? एनबीए एंड आईबीए का काम भी वही है. सो आप लोग एक थ्रेशोल्ड पर हैं और ये आवाज आपसे उठनी चाहिए, एटलीस्ट एज ए रीडर. व्हाई नॉट एन ऑफिशियल रेगुलेटर? आपके कन्वोकेशन में इंफॉर्मेशन मिनिस्टर आए थे. सम ऑफ यू कुड हैव आस्क्ड दैट, व्हाई नॉट एन ऑफिशियल रेगुलेटर? आप थे कन्वोकेशन में? नहीं थे. कन्वोकेशन के दौरान नहीं थे आप? थे ना. ये सवाल उनसे पूछने की जरूरत है कि क्यों हमारे देश में रेगुलेटर नहीं है. I will just come to you. In the US, there is a very effective regulator. उसको कहते हैं FCC, Federal Communication Commission. वो सिर्फ रेगुलेट का काम ही नहीं करते हैं. अगर आप रेगुलेशन से हटते हैं तो दे इम्पोज हैवी फाइन्स ऑल्सो. दे डू नॉट अलाउड मोनोपोलाइजेशन, जो उन्होंने मर्डोक के खिलाफ किया. दे डिड नॉट अलाउ मर्डोक टू टेक ओवर ऑल द न्यूज़पेपर्स ऑफ US. That is the job of the regulator, because in a democracy there has to be different voices. Having different voices doesn't mean you are playing with the news. Maybe there is a small item today. Tomorrow you investigate it and find something more to it. There may be many wrongs have happened which have not come out. So there is a follow-up in the news also. No? You must have been told about the follow-up. So in the follow-up that we get, we publish that also. That's how the different kind of facts come out different days. The Panama Papers, they did not come out in one day. In different days, we find different facts are coming out. And this is possible in any democracy because there would be newspapers run by different people and different combinations and different kind of mindset. So if you are expressing your mindset in the editorial pages, you have the rights, but not in the news pages. In the news pages, you have to adhere to the absolute facts. I won't say again truth. Not manipulating the facts. And that is the job of the regulator to ensure. Do you think in the UK they are still satisfied with this erstwhile press commission? No. They have no Ofcom. Again, it has powers and teeth both. It can also impose fines, take severe actions. So why Indian democracy, which is supposed to be the most vibrant democracy, give unfettered unregulation to any system? A small distortion in news can hit, I am not saying affect, can hit crores of people. That is why we want regulation, that it should not happen. The society should not be punished for my foolishness or my mischievousness. The regulator's job is to prevent that. Regulator's job is to see that nobody writes in a way that incites the passion of anybody. And regulator's job does not remain just up to here. I will just give you a small story about South Africa. It goes also beyond the normal news to economic news as well, because more mischief in reality is done there. When Nestle, even in this country, or Glaxo and Africa, they have been projecting that their artificial milk is better than breast milk. The society accepted like that. And in 50s and 60s, in this country also and almost all over the Europe and US, there were generations of women who virtually did not prefer to breastfeed, causing immense harm to the generations. Now I am giving a small last part of it. Have you heard of Rio Tinto? It has been in the news for many unethical aspects. Rio Tinto is a company, and it is in the news basically for its unethical functioning in South Africa. Basically, they are one of the biggest diamond prospectors and sellers. So at one place, they found, as per their surveys, that there was an immense diamond reserve. But a few thousand people were living over that piece of land. The Rio Tinto allowed these people get in touch with them for almost 2 years, and they said, we will relocating you. We are giving you this nice patches of land and all those nice, nice facilities and everything. So you shift there and give us this patch of land. Fine. Finally, that society, that community agreed. They moved there. They had nice pieces of land, agricultural land and everything. But after about 4 years or less, they found Rio Tinto had sold that patch of land where these people were relocated to another company called Green. And then Green forced them to relocate at a patch of land where there was no quality water, no quality soil, and all kinds of other problems. This is happening in the Oking country also in many cases. POSCO is one of the examples. The bauxite form mines that were to be mined by Vedanta were another issues. And similar many other things are happening at many places here. In this part of the land where your university is, there was a company which had got 5,500 acres of land. They got its position, they quietly sold it away, made billions out of it, or also obliged many political persons. Has any newspaper come out with all the details of that? As a reader, anybody has a right to go to a regulator. Nobody went to press council, forget about. And since there is no regulator for the television, nobody can't go to them. The regulator's job is very important. It is not a shackle on a journalist, but only a way to ensure the journalist remains on his path and doesn't divide. Am I correct? अब आपके पास कुछ सवाल हो तो बताइए, फिर उसकी बातें करके फिर हम आज के यस प्लीज.
सो एज यू सेड कि बहुत सारे इन्फॉर्मेशन जो है वो बहुत बार पब्लिश नहीं होता है, तो सर आई वुड लाइक टू नो कि सर क्या इस इन्फॉर्मेशन पे मीडिया ध्यान नहीं दे रहा है या देयर इज अ पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर कि ये कॉमन लोगों तक पहुंच ही नहीं पाती है?
Normally, देखिए, there are two things to it. Normally, the kind of condition that is there in the media doesn't spend much on news coverage. That is, since 50s till today, no newspaper spends more than 2% on actual news collection. वो उसमें सैलरीज जो भी फैसिलिटीज देते हैं सब जोड़ लेते हैं. So newspapers, the news collection system is very weak. Television finds कि जो so called discussion होते हैं, they are the cheapest way of the functioning of the television. तो डिस्कशन करा दो, 3-4 घंटे लोगों को एंगेज रखो, अपने टीआरपी बढ़ा लो. न्यूज़ फाइंड करने के लिए जो मेहनत करनी होती है, जिसमें पैसे भी लगते हैं, मेहनत भी लगती है, वो कौन करे? पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर्स कभी कभी कहीं कहीं हो सकता है, पर हर जगह हर वक्त होता है ऐसा तो नहीं है. किसी किसी इशू में कहीं कहीं हो सकता है. बट इफ यू succumb to that, that also becomes an issue for the regulator. Okay. So this country needs very alert reader, alert listener, alert viewer, so that the entire news system, why shouldn't the online system have a regulator? Online system में तो क्या क्या trash जाता है, you can't trust it at all. So, regulator's job is extremely important, not only to keep the news system pure, but it is also required so that the democracy remains on track and is not divided by any unscrupulous elements.
So, sir, I guess we both agree that as per the defense, media is also important part of the country. तो सर जब हमारे पास हर चीज़ के लिए एक गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर है जो उस चीज़ को देख रहा है, तो हाउ कैन वी गिव द ब्रॉडकास्टिंग एजेंसी टू ए प्राइवेट एजेंसी हु आर स्टार्टेड इन 2008 अक्टूबर? हम एनबीए के अंडर क्यों देते हैं? हमारे पास एक गवर्नमेंट एजेंसी क्यों नहीं है इतना फर्म जो उस चीज़ को रेगुलेट करे और ब्रॉडकास्टिंग चेक करे? और सर लाइसेंस को स्ट्रिक्टली कैंसिल क्यों नहीं करते?
देखिए, नॉर्मली cancellation of the license or suspension of the license often Ministry of Information करती है. If I am the regulator, I would not accept it. Yes, वो हम काम करते हैं, कभी कभी हमसे गलती हो सकती है. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हमें शूली पे टांग दीजिए. अगर हम घर में रह रहे हैं, हमारे घर के बुजुर्ग हैं, तो हमें डांट सकते हैं, कभी कभी मार भी सकते हैं, पर हम कभी ये उम्मीद नहीं करेंगे कि हमें सीधे शूट कर देंगे. That is what the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is doing, and that is why we need an effective regulator for all the sectors. Okay? जितने भी सिस्टम्स हमारे हैं न्यूज़ के, जितने भी, उनके लिए हमें एक इफेक्टिव रेगुलेटर की इसलिए ज़रूरत है. यस,
अगर पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर रहता है तो मीडिया की फ्रीडम की यहाँ पे कोई बात नहीं है. अगर मीडिया की फ्रीडम है और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में फोर्थ पिलर कहते हैं मीडिया को, तो वाई सर देयर इज़ नो स्पेसिफिक लॉ फॉर मीडिया? क्योंकि जितना हमने अभी तक पढ़ा है, मीडिया को लेके कोई भी स्पेसिफिक लॉ नहीं है अब हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में.
मीडिया को लेके लॉ नहीं है, दैट इज़ नॉट करेक्ट. There are many laws that govern the media. IT Act governs the media. IPC governs the media. There are various other, even आपको मालूम है कि नहीं मुझे नहीं पता, even जो सिविल डिफेंस एंड होम गार्ड्स एक्ट है, उसमें भी प्रोविजंस है मीडिया के लिए. तो ऐसा नहीं है, मीडिया इज कवर्ड बाय वेरियस काइंड्स ऑफ लॉज, नॉट वन लॉ. नो, आई वोंट एग्री देयर इज मैनिपुलेशन. देखिए, मैनिपुलेट कोई होना चाहे कभी भी हो सकता है. Nobody can stop a person from getting manipulated. But किसी भी सिस्टम में आपने कहा पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर इस तरह से नहीं आता है कि आप उसको मानना ही है. आप अगर उसको मानना चाहते हैं क्योंकि आपको उससे कुछ फ़ायदा लेना है, कौन रोक पाएगा उसको? अगर आप एग्ज़ाम में बैठे हैं, नॉर्मली द रूल इन एग्ज़ाम इज़ दैट यू शुड नॉट कॉपी. अगर आप कहीं चुपके से कॉपी कर रहा है और कोई नहीं देख रहा है या नहीं देख पा रहा है, तो कैन एनीबडी स्टॉप यू? सो सोसाइटी में जो एबरेशंस हैं, जो हर क्षेत्र में होता है, यहाँ भी हो सकता है, बट एबरेशन इज नॉट द रूल. कहीं कहीं कभी कभी हो जाता है, दैट इज अ डिफरेंट इशू.
आईआईटी का जो एनुअल बजट निकलता है 5,000 करोड़ 6,000 करोड़, इसका ब्यौरा तो उन्हें पता होता है कि हाँ इतने 1,000 करोड़ का बजट आईआईटी को दिया गया, पर कभी इस बारे में किसी ने आरटीआई अप्लाई नहीं करा कि उस बजट का किया क्या जाता है, हमारा पैसा जाता कहाँ है. और इसके लिए भी सर कोई न्यूज़पेपर खुलासा नहीं करता है.
नहीं, न्यूज़पेपर्स के पास देखिए, मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा, न्यूज़पेपर्स के पास तरह तरह न्यूज़पेपर्स के स्टाफ कम होता है, खर्चे ज़्यादा होते हैं, और न्यूज़ पे खर्च करने के लिए उनके पास पैसे 2-4 बड़े अखबारों को छोड़ के बाकियों के पास नहीं होता है. लेट अस एक्सेप्ट दिस फैक्ट. इसलिए हर कुछ एक्सपेक्ट करना कि न्यूज़पेपर्स करेंगे या कोई करेगा नहीं. बट हमारा एज ए होल सोसाइटी हमने क्या किया? वी नेवर प्रोटेस्टेड इट. मुझे याद है, हमारा जनरेशन तो इसके लिए जाना जाता था, घर उसमें हुजूम खड़ा कर देते हैं. हम लोग छोटी छोटी बातों पे सड़क पे निकल जाया करते थे, सरकार की खाट खड़ी कर देते. तो सो दैट इज़ इट. That is what you need to understand, that our job is to have an open dialogue in the society so that it can take an informed decision. Okay? Thank you.